Welcome to your nutrition and weight loss class, Strategies for Success. This will be an 8-part video series. Part 1, we're going to be discussing what exactly obesity is. Obesity is a lifelong, progressive, life-threatening disease of excess fat storage. It's classified as a chronic medical condition. Another example of a chronic medical condition is diabetes. Chronic means ongoing. So once you've been diagnosed with a chronic medical condition like diabetes, that diagnosis follows you for life. So you might be able to control your diabetes with diet and exercise and no longer be on medication, but that diagnosis is always going to be there. You will always be at a greater risk of having to go back on medication. So when we're looking at obesity as an ongoing chronic medical condition, once that diagnosis is there, you will always be at a greater risk for weight regain. Just because you get down to your goal weight doesn't mean you're cured from obesity. Obesity is a multifactorial disease. That means there's multiple different factors that can play a role in obesity. Genetics, lifestyle, physical inactivity, unhealthy diet, medical problems, certain medications, lack of sleep, smoking cessation, etc. Environment, behavior, and genetics are 3 major things that we're worried about when we're talking about this multifactorial disease. Unfortunately, we can't control our genetics, but we can control our environment and our behaviors. And that's what we will be discussing during this video series. There are multiple different health consequences of obesity. High blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, heart disease, stroke, gallbladder disease, osteoarthritis, sleep apnea and breathing problems, certain forms of cancer, and of course a decreased quality of life. Many of you might be undergoing the surgery process because of these health consequences, whether you're hoping that these issues get better or resolved, or to prevent these consequences from occurring. So before we move on to the other parts of this video series, I want you to take a few minutes to answer the following questions. They are found on your post-test that was provided to you in the clinic. What was the deciding factor that had you pursue surgery? And what are you hoping to achieve at a lower body weight? Take a few minutes to answer these questions on that sheet of paper provided. It's important for you to think back and remember along this journey why you're putting this work and effort forward. What are you hoping to achieve on the other side? So when those bumps in the road come along, you're reminded for what those benefits are you are hoping to achieve. The next video series will be part 2, components of food, including your macronutrients and micronutrients. Welcome to part 2 of the nutrition and weight loss class. We are now going to discuss components of food, macronutrients, and micronutrients. It's important to understand that bariatric surgery is not a guarantee for weight loss. You must commit to long-term lifestyle changes in diet and exercise. After surgery, it is necessary to learn a new way of eating to help you succeed in meeting your goals long-term. In this video series, you will be learning about the different food groups, understanding what foods fall into each category, and identifying what to get in at each meal. You will hear us refer to surgery multiple times during the process as a tool. It's a tool that's going to help you in achieving your goals. There's always ways to work around a tool, and that's generally when we see patients not achieving their ultimate long-term goals. The strategies we're going to be discussing are going to help support you with achieving results with this tool and succeeding long-term with your goals. There are two major components of food: macronutrients and micronutrients. Macro means big, and these nutrients are essential. So when we say essential, what that means is you actually cannot produce these things inside your body. They have to be taken in from an outside source. Macronutrients provide calories, which are needed for energy. They're needed for growth, metabolism, and other bodily functions. The three major macronutrients are protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Micronutrients, on the other hand, micro means 3, 2, 1. Micronutrients, on the other hand, micro means small. These are also essential, but in much smaller quantities. They help the body to produce enzymes, hormones, and other substances for growth and development. These include your vitamins and minerals. As I said earlier, 3, 2, 1. Macronutrients, as we said before, provide your body with calories, which is needed for energy. For every gram of protein, you get 4 calories. For every gram of carbohydrates, 4 calories. For every gram of fat, 9 calories. So calories are more than 3, 2, 1. Macronutrients provide your body with calories, which are needed for energy. For every gram of protein, you get 4 calories. For every gram of carbohydrate, 4 calories. And for every gram of fat, 9 calories. For every gram of fat, you're getting more than double the amount of calories than you are for every gram of carbohydrates and protein. It's important that you balance these nutrients to achieve proper nutrition, and it's the balance of calories that's going to help you achieve weight loss and long-term weight management. Micronutrients, which include those vitamins and minerals, are found in many foods. That's why it's important that we incorporate in variety. You don't want to just eat from one food group or eat one certain food because you're not going to get in the variety of multivitamins and minerals that are needed. Many people still don't get enough of the vitamins and minerals every day, even if they are eating a balanced diet. After surgery, you have decreased intake of the amount you are able to take in, as well as some malabsorption of certain vitamins and minerals. It's important to know that there is no malabsorption of calories after surgery. You can't eat what you want and still expect to lose weight. But there is some malabsorption of vitamins and minerals, which is why vitamin and mineral supplements must be taken daily and for life after surgery. There are specific multivitamins and minerals that you will be needing to take, and when you come in for your bariatric surgery prep class, we will discuss these in greater detail. There might also be additional supplements as prescribed by your physician due to lab work coming back with low vitamin and mineral deficiencies, or maybe something that started out low even before surgery. The next video series is Part 3, Protein. Protein. So when I say protein, what foods come to mind? Protein-containing foods include fish, poultry, meat, eggs, dairy, nuts, legumes, which include beans, and lentils. Protein helps build muscle, fight infection, and heal wounds. It can also help you to stay full longer. Protein is the most important nutrient after surgery. We encourage you to incorporate in a protein source at each meal to meet your daily protein goal. Remember, for every gram of protein, there's 4 calories. And when we're looking at a good protein source, it contains at least 7 grams of protein per every 100 calories. Your goal for protein after surgery is 60 to 80 grams per day. That translates to approximately 3 to 4 ounces of protein per meal, which is about the size of a deck of cards. While protein is important, we also don't want to overconsume protein. Overconsumption of protein leads to extra protein intake, which also leads to extra calories. When it comes down to it, it's about that calorie balance. So 3 to 4 ounces, the size of a deck of cards, is all we need. Think back to the last chicken breast you cooked. It was probably the size of 2 to 3 decks. We want to also focus on healthy portion sizes, and that also incorporates your proteins. So let's look at some examples to see if they would meet that good protein source after surgery. Remember, 7 grams per every 100 calories. Let's take a 3-ounce chicken breast, for instance. There is 128 calories and 26 grams of protein versus 3 ounces of bacon, 350 calories and 11 grams of protein. Based on that 7 gram to 100 calorie ratio, would these be appropriate protein sources after surgery? The chicken breast would be. It meets that ratio. The bacon, on the other hand, has a lot of calories and not very much protein. While it does contain some protein, it wouldn't be considered a good protein source after surgery. The extra calories are coming from fat. Here are some great examples of protein content in foods that fit that 7 to 100 ratio. 3 ounces of chicken breast, 3 ounces of salmon, 2 eggs, or a half a cup of cottage cheese. So these would be good protein sources after surgery. The next video series is Part 4, Carbohydrates. So when I say carbohydrates, what foods come to mind? Grains, that includes bread, rice, pasta, tortillas, cereals. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, beans and lentils. Some dairy products, specifically milk and yogurt, and anything with added sugars. Carbohydrates, also known as carbs, are the primary energy source for the body. The different types of carbohydrates include sugars, starches, and fiber. For every gram of carbohydrates, you get 4 calories. It's important that we're choosing complex carbohydrates versus simple carbohydrates. We generally recommend that you avoid simple carbohydrates after surgery, and we'll talk about the difference between these two here in a moment. Your goal after surgery is 60 to 80 grams of carbohydrates per day for the first year after surgery. Think back. What was that protein goal again? Yep, 60 to 80 grams. We're trying to make things easy to remember, so think 60 to 80 grams of protein and carbohydrates. Those are your goals. After the first year, your limit for carbohydrates can gradually increase to about 100 to 130 grams per day, but this can be dependent on person. What their ultimate goals are with weight loss, if they have continued weight they need to lose, and how active they are. Someone who's incorporating a lot more activity into their day and exercise will generally need more carbohydrates than someone who might have more of a sedentary desk job. Here are some great examples of carbohydrate content in foods, and you can see how some foods add up in carbohydrates much quicker than others. For instance, a half a cup of granola has 35 grams of carbs, and one large flour tortilla has 44 grams. If your goal is only 60 to 80, you've consumed a lot of your carbohydrate intake for the day with one of those items. Whereas a medium apple only has 20 grams of carbohydrates, and a medium sweet potato about 26 grams. So let's discuss the difference between simple and complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are made up of one or two sugar molecules. So this is kind of looking more at the biology of it. But if you think of one or two molecules together, when they are absorbed into the bloodstream, let's go back. 3, 2, 1. Let's now look at the difference between simple and complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are made of one or two sugar molecules and are easily absorbed into the bloodstream. That easy absorption rapidly increases your blood sugar levels. And rapid increases in blood sugar are not a good thing. They also lack vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Sources include white bread, candy, desserts, and anything with added sugar. Complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, are made up of 3 or more sugar molecules, so they absorb more slowly in the bloodstream because it takes more energy to break these apart. They lead to steady blood sugar levels, which is what we want to see throughout the day. They contain vitamins, minerals, and fiber, and our sources include whole grain breads, starchy vegetables, beans, and fruit. So we want to choose more complex carbohydrates and avoid and eliminate those simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates, as I stated, also include those added sugars. I want to look at this in a little bit more detail because added sugars are the #1 reason for dumping syndrome after surgery. Dumping syndrome is a side effect where the contents of the stomach rapidly move into the small bowel, causing water to come out of the blood vessels into the body and into the small bowel. It can cause nausea, vomiting, cramping, bloatingness, diarrhea, lightheadedness, kind of have the shakes and jitters. Not very pleasant side effect, but it can be avoided, and that's why we recommend avoiding those simple carbohydrates. Sodas and fruit drinks actually contribute the highest amount of sugar in the American diet. Caloric beverages after surgery have also been shown to promote weight regain. This is why we encourage you to drink water to satisfy your thirst. Also, avoid cold cereals, which tend to have a high sugar content. Most cereals actually contain greater than 60% sugar. After surgery, we recommend limiting your sugar to no more than 15 grams per meal. There are multiple different names for added sugar, as you can see listed here. honey, maple syrup, agave, while they are natural, they are still absorbed in our bloodstream just like an added sugar. So we do need to be cautious when using these products. Non-nutritive sweeteners like stevia, Splenda, or Sweet and Low will be fine after surgery. They tend to not cause issues like dumping syndrome. Grains provide a large source of carbohydrates. They're a good source of B vitamins, iron, and fiber. But post-surgery, many grains should be avoided for the first year. This includes bread, rice, pasta, and tortillas. The reason we recommend avoiding these the first year after surgery is because these are foods that can easily swell. If you're eating foods that easily swell and take up space in the stomach, you're generally not going to be getting in your protein goal. Also, they can easily get hung up going down, which is not very pleasant. And most patients who start to introduce these things sooner than the first year can slow down their weight loss and ultimately not meet their goals. When we are choosing grains, though, we want to choose unrefined versus refined. So let's look at what the difference is. So on this slide, you can see a wheat molecule. The inner part contains the endosperm, which is the starchy part of the grain. The bran is on the outside, which contains the fiber. And the germ contains the vitamins and minerals. When we process grains, a lot of times we process them where we remove that bran and germ. So we're removing the good parts, the fiber and vitamins and minerals. That leaves us with the starchy endosperm to make nice fluffy, 3, 2, 1. So that leaves us with just the starchy endosperm to make white fluffy bread, flour, cereals, and rice. Unrefined complex grains, when they process these, they leave the bran and germ intact. So it's leaving all the good stuff still on the grain. Sources include whole wheat bread, whole wheat flours, whole wheat cereals, brown rice, oatmeal, and quinoa. Fruits and vegetables also fall under the carbohydrates. They help our eyes, hair, blood, and it boosts your immune system. They're good sources of vitamins, mineral, and fiber. And fruits and starchy vegetables are healthy sources of carbohydrates. Our goal is to have a serving of vegetables and fruits with every meal and snack. When we're looking at vegetables, there are non-starchy vegetables and starchy vegetables. Non-starchy vegetables typically are the flowering parts of the plant. They contain very little carbohydrates and allow you to stay full for less calories. Examples include lettuce, asparagus, broccoli, cucumber, mushrooms, peppers, and tomatoes. The non-starchy vegetables are the highest volume foods you can eat for the fewest amount of calories. Starchy vegetables include several types of roots, bulbs, and kernels. These are still complex carbs, are good carbohydrates, but because they contain a little bit more carbohydrates, they do contain more calories than non-starchy vegetables. Examples include corn, peas, potatoes, squash, pumpkin, parsnips, and beans. It's not that starchy vegetables are bad for us, but we do need to watch the amounts in which we consume them in. Also, be careful for the additional add-ins that we generally add to these. Take a typical white potato, for instance. We normally don't eat it plain. We fry them to make French fries. We add butter, sour cream, bacon, and cheese. That's what adds up in calories. It's not necessarily the white potato that's adding up. A sweet potato, on the other hand, when baked in the oven, is really nice and sweet, and we don't have to add as many add-ins to it. The recommendation for fruits and vegetables is to get in 5 or more servings per day. A serving of vegetable is a cup of vegetables, a half a cup of beans, 2 cups of lettuce or leafy greens, a medium piece of fruit, 1 cup of unsweetened canned fruit, or a cup of sliced fruit or berries. Immediately post-surgery, you probably won't be able to get in the full 5 servings per day. But as you are able to tolerate more volume, we encourage you to incorporate in more vegetables and fruits versus adding in additional servings of protein and carbohydrates. And our goal with fruits and vegetables truly is to eat the rainbow. Each color represents different vitamins and minerals. So when you're at the grocery store, look down in your cart and make sure that when you're leaving the produce section, that you're seeing variety when it comes to colors. Fiber is also a component of carbohydrates, and the Dietary Guidelines for Americans recommends we get in 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. The average American only consumes less than 10 grams per day, and it makes sense because fiber-containing foods include vegetables, fruits, beans, and whole grains, things that are generally lacking in the average American diet. But we want to get more fiber in because there's multiple benefits. It helps with weight management. It lowers cholesterol. Fiber actually naturally pulls cholesterol out of the body. Helps with bowel motility, making your bowel movements more regular. It helps with satiety, which means fullness. Keeps you full for a longer period of time, which is why it can help with weight management. And it decreases your risk of colon cancer. On this slide, you can see the fiber content in some common foods and how quickly they add up. When you're incorporating in more fruits, vegetables, beans, and whole grains in your daily diet, you can see how you can easily meet the 25 to 35 grams recommended per day. Now that we've talked about both protein and carbohydrates, you might have noticed there were some food groups that actually fell in both categories. So dairy helps maintain strong bones and teeth. It's a good source of calcium and protein, and milk and yogurt are healthy sources of carbohydrates. Your goal is to have 3 servings of a low-fat dairy food per day. But it's important to recognize what a serving size of dairy is. 8 ounces of milk, 1 ounce of cheese, like a string cheese, 6 ounces of yogurt, or 4 ounces of cottage cheese. Legumes include beans, peas, and lentils. They're good sources of protein, fiber, and vitamins and minerals, and they contain healthy carbohydrates. Try swapping a meal with meat for a meal made with legumes to save fat and calories. Dairy and legumes are a great way for you to get in protein after surgery. Many times after surgery, a lot of lean meats aren't always well tolerated. Especially think of like a dry, overcooked chicken breast. Isn't going to go down very well. So if you're not tolerating meat products very well, this is where we want to encourage more dairy and bean consumption to really make sure you're getting your protein in. The next video series, part 5, is about fats and reading the food label. So when I say fat, What foods come to mind? Fat-containing foods include oils, butter, margarine, meats, poultry, fish, nuts, dairy, and grains. The reason grains are on here is because we generally add some kind of oil or butter to make them fluffy and moist. So it's not necessarily the flour that contains the carbohydrate that's containing the fat. 3, 2, 1. Fat-containing foods include oils, butter, margarine, meats, poultry, and fish, nuts, dairy, and grains. Now, when we're looking at grains, it's generally the oils and butters that are used to make these products that is where the fat is coming from. It's not going to be from the flours. Remember, those contain carbohydrates. Now, fats play a role in a variety of body functions. Because they are so common in our diets, limited intake is recommended. Remember that 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. We want to choose more unsaturated fats versus saturated fats. Unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature. And all people should avoid trans fats, which we'll discuss here in a moment. Now, while you had a goal for protein and carbohydrates, there is actually no goal for fat. We just want to consume healthy fats in moderation. So let's look at what are examples of unsaturated fats. As I said, you want to choose more unsaturated fats. These are heart-healthy fats. They include fish, flaxseed, soybean, olive oil, canola oil, nuts, avocado, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, and soybean oil. Saturated fats are not heart healthy. These generally come from animal products, including beef, pork, veal, lamb, full-fat dairy, hydrogenated vegetable oils, cocoa butter, coconut oil, and palm oil. So we want to be careful about the amounts of saturated fats we are consuming. Trans fats should be avoided or eliminated altogether. Trans fats are directly linked with heart disease, and no one should be consuming trans fats. So we want to remove the shortening sticks and margarine. And if anything says partially hydrogenated oil in the ingredient list, put it back on the shelf. Here are some common foods and the fat content in them. 3 ounces of chicken breast has 3 grams of fat. 3 ounces of salmon, 5 grams of fat. A tablespoon of olive oil, 14 grams of fat. And an ounce of almonds, 15 grams of fat. Now remember, I said for every gram of fat, there's 9 calories. So if we're looking at that tablespoon of olive oil at 14 grams of fat, each tablespoon of olive oil is going to be about 120 calories. How many grams of fat and calories do you think are found in butter? It's actually a trick question. 14 grams of fat and about 120 calories. A tablespoon of fat is a tablespoon of fat, whether it's olive oil or butter. Yes, olive oil is more heart healthy, so making the swap from butter to olive oil is preferred, but we still need to be cognizant that those grams of fat add up in extra calories. So if you take a cup of broccoli and you're sauteing it in a pan with a tablespoon of olive oil, the broccoli is low in fat, so it's going to act like a sponge and soak up that 120 calories of olive oil. So now your 30-calorie cup of broccoli is 150 calories. An ounce of nuts is approximately 15 grams of fat. An ounce of almonds is only about 10 to 12 almonds. While nuts are heart healthy, they can quickly add up in calories. An ounce of nuts can range anywhere from about 140 to 106. 3, 2, 1. An ounce of nuts can range anywhere from 140 to 160 calories. A cup of nuts contains 500 calories. While it is heart healthy, we still need to watch portions. So how can we reduce your overall fat intake? Remove visible fat from meats. Use nonstick sprays or broth to cook with versus oil or butter. Practice healthy cooking methods, baking, broiling, roasting, grilling, and steaming. Avoid excess condiment use, limit to the serving size. And choose items low in fat. So that would be less than 5 grams per serving. So now let's look at a food label. It's important after surgery that you are your own food detective. Your first line of defense is going to be at the grocery store. So you need to become familiar with what to look at when you're looking at a nutrition facts label. The first area we want to look at is the serving size. The serving size designates how much of that product is the general recommended consumption. And then, as you can see, this label, the serving size is 3/4 of a cup. So for every 3/4 of a cup of this product, you will see 110 calories, 1 gram of fat, 23 grams of carbohydrates, 10 grams of sugar, and 13 grams of protein. The serving size in this container is 14 servings. So if we're having more than the serving size, we need to multiply that number based on the number of servings we are having. So remember earlier we discussed the 7 to 100 gram ratio for protein. We also discussed that we should not be consuming more than 15 grams of sugar per meal. So let's look at some examples of food labels for some common foods and see if they're appropriate for after surgery. We'll start with this chewy granola bar. So the serving size is 1 bar, and there's 20 servings per container, so a box of 20 bars, but you are just going to have 1 bar. Would this be an appropriate food after surgery? The answer is no. There was only 2 grams of protein for 140 calories, and it had 15 grams of sugar. We generally recommend not teetering on the line. Some individuals might experience dumping syndrome at a lower threshold than 15. So generally, if it is at the 15, I wouldn't try it. Now let's look at a protein bar. The serving size is 1 bar. There's 6 bars in the container, but you're just going to have 1 bar. Would this be an appropriate food after surgery? The answer is yes. There's 21 grams of protein and 180 calories. So that definitely meets that criteria for 7 to 100. And there's only 3 grams of sugar. You might notice this product also contains sugar alcohols. Sugar alcohols can be used in products to reduce the overall added sugar intake. Sugar alcohols can still cause dumping syndrome when consumed in excess. Also, excessive sugar alcohol intake can lead to some gastrointestinal distress. So we still want to be mindful of the amount coming in. The next video series is Part 6, Weight Gain and Maintenance, Calories. So why do we gain weight? It's all about an energy balance. Calories in versus calories out. And I'm sure you've heard this one before. But what exactly is a calorie? A calorie is a measure of energy found in food, and it's how much our body uses. Weight gain occurs when the amount of energy ingested, the food we take in, exceeds the amount of energy expended, the exercise that we put out. Remember, for protein, there's 4 calories per gram, carbohydrates is 4 calories per gram, and fat is 9 calories per gram. So how many calories should we be consuming? What I would like for you to do is calculate your maintenance calories equation. Please take out the sheet that was provided to you with the post-test, and on the second page, under Part 6, you will find an area for you to calculate your maintenance calories at your current weight. So you are going to use this equation. The first blank, you need to fill in your current weight. You multiply that by 10 to get your maintenance calories. You don't need a calculator, just add in 0 on the end of your weight. So if you are 250 pounds, we multiply that by 10, would be 2,500 calories would be your maintenance calories. So the maintenance calories is the number of calories required for you to maintain your current body weight. So that's how many calories you would need to take in to stay at the weight you're at right now. Now, in order to lose weight, we have to deficit calories. Take in less. Let's now calculate your maintenance calories at your goal weight. So the second line actually allows you to calculate your maintenance calories at your goal weight. So I want for you to plug 3, 2, 1. So I want you to plug in your goal weight, multiply that by 10, and that will provide you with your maintenance calories at your goal weight. So if your goal weight is 150 pounds, multiply by 10 would be 1,500 calories to maintain your goal weight. I want you to notice the difference between the maintenance calories at your current weight versus the maintenance calories at your goal weight. Many of you might say it's half, or there's a significant lower amount of calories at my maintenance calories at my goal weight. And this makes sense. When there's less of your body to fuel, there's less calories that need to come in. It's about deficiting calories and maintaining that deficit. Surgery helps you by restricting the amount of food that you can consume at once. Allows you to stay full and satiated for a longer period of time. If you're not using that tool and you're just constantly grazing throughout the day, you're generally going to increase your caloric intake. which we know leads to weight regain. So it's important to understand that in order to lose weight from your current body weight, we have to deficit calories. But many times that deficit is the same amount of calories you're going to need to continue to practice to keep weight off long term. So as you're losing weight, you're learning strategies and skills that have to be practiced for life in order to keep that weight off long term. As I stated, it is about an energy balance, intake versus output. Let's look at another example of how much you would have to burn to work off some calories. Walking burns about 5 calories per minute. So to burn 100 calories, you'd have to walk a mile at a 3 mile per hour pace. That isn't a Sunday stroll in the park. You'd be walking at a pretty good clip. A Burger King Whopper contains 640 calories. So to walk off that Burger King Whopper, we'll divide that by 5 calories per minute. You would have to walk 128 minutes or 6 miles. Let's look at a lower calorie alternative. We have the same volume of food, but far less calories. A Subway 6-inch turkey sub, no cheese, no mayonnaise, has 289 calories. So to walk that turkey sub off, burning 5 calories per minute, we'd have to walk for 57 minutes or 3 miles. Half the amount of exercise because there's half the amount of calories. One of the biggest challenges we're up against is that foods once looked like this. We had an abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables everywhere. We paired that with lean proteins, beans, and whole grains. And now our foods look like this. Packaged, processed, prepared, a lot of added sugar and added fats. It makes sense why we might not eat a lot, but it seems like we still continue to lose weight. These don't provide us with a lot of volume. They're what we call weight-promoting foods. It doesn't take a lot of these to really add up. Also, our portions have gotten larger than ever before. Take a typical dinner plate in 1960s. It was 8.5 inches and held about 800 calories. I don't know about you, but this looks like my salad plate or appetizer plate at home. Our dinner plates these days are about 12 inches and hold 1,900 calories. It's more than double the amount of calories than that 8.5-inch dinner plate. As our portions have gotten bigger, we would need to actually burn more exercise in order to attribute, let's go back. All right, 3, 2, 1. Another thing we're up against is this portion distortion. Take a typical dinner plate in 1960s. It was 8.5 inches and held 800 calories. In my house, we consider this the salad plate or maybe even the appetizer plate. A dinner plate now is about 12 inches and holds 1,900 calories. That's more than double the amount of calories. But as our portions have increased, we haven't gotten more active. So we're not burning those extra calories off, and that's really what's leading to greater weight gain. This is a great example of intake versus output. We are a supersized society, so let's take a typical fast food meal out, a double quarter pounder with cheese, chocolate shake, supersized fries, and 2 packets of ketchup. 2,550 calories for this meal. I want you to think back to your maintenance calories at your current weight. Would you have much left for the day? Remember, this is one meal. This is no other eating throughout the day. probably don't have much left, if any. Now think about this at your goal weight. Would you have any calories left for the day? You might have eaten your calories for 2 days with a meal like this. It's important to understand that we can't outrun a bad diet. We have to make changes to our diet. We can't just rely on physical activity. Because in order to burn a meal like this off, we would have to do something like high-intensity mountain climbing that burns 10 calories a minute for 4 hours and 15 minutes. Now maybe you can't do mountain climbing, so you're going to have to walk. You'd have to walk approximately 30 miles to burn a meal like that off. So remember, we can't outrun that bad diet. So what am I getting at? We need to focus on healthy portion sizes, healthier foods, and making sure we're eating the proper portions. This guide goes over the different food groups and what are the appropriate portions for each of the foods. The next video series is part 7, Weight Loss Strategies for Success. When we're looking at weight loss, it involves multiple lifestyle changes that need to be practiced for life. Healthy eating, physical activity, and environmental control. But consistency is important. As we discussed with that calorie balance, it's about learning to deficit calories and continuing to practice those strategies long term. If we're not consistent with our behaviors, we can't expect to see consistency on the scale. Successful weight management takes practice, just like learning any new skill. If you were to try to learn a new instrument, you would have to practice that skill over and over and over again until you got better at that skill. And successful weight management is just that. It's multiple different skills that have to be practiced over and over and over again in order for you to have these behaviors become more routine. You have a lifetime of habits and behaviors that revolve around food that you don't even think about. So it's all about practice. Successful strategies for weight loss include keeping a food journal, filling up on vegetables, not drinking your calories, reducing eating out, practicing mindful eating, setting up your environment for success, and of course, physical activity. We are going to talk about each one of these strategies one by one. So a food journal. A food journal helps you to learn about your eating habits, helps you to explore what you eat, how much you eat, when you eat, and how you feel when you eat. It brings self-awareness and accountability to what is going in your mouth. Individuals who track their food intake lose 50% more weight. 50% more weight. That's a huge statistic. So how do we get the most out of our food journal? You need to choose the method that will work best for you, whether it's written, a website, or a phone application. If you hate electronic devices, use a written record. If you have your smartphone with you at all times throughout the day, download a smartphone tracking app. You want to track your foods and beverages as you eat them. You can easily forget that snack you had mid-morning or how much of something you had if you're not writing it down as you go. Number 3, use measuring devices for accuracy with portions. You might think you're putting a half a cup of rice on your plate, when in all reality, it's a full cup. That's double the amount of calories. Number 4, track the times that you eat so you can see your patterns and behaviors. Number 5, track your emotions. There might be certain emotions that are tied to certain food triggers. Identifying this is important if we're wanting to break that. And number 6, vow to be honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself, it's going to be really hard to make change. Just because you had a bad day doesn't mean you don't want to track it. Just because you didn't track it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Those can be the most important days to track to bring more awareness to what is truly coming in. There are multiple free tracking applications and websites out there. I have some listed here. Choose the method that you enjoy the most. The next strategy is practicing using the healthy plate. The healthy plate works by first filling half your plate with non-starchy vegetables. By filling the plate with vegetables first, it helps you reduce your portions of carbohydrates and proteins. It helps you to fill up on healthy, filling foods to reduce your overall calorie intake. Remember, you only need about 3 to 4 ounces of lean protein per meal, and we want to incorporate a serving of a complex carbohydrate at each meal. Some strategies is to swap half of a starch or protein in a casserole pasta dish with vegetables. The next slides have some examples of non-starchy vegetables. What would fall into those categories? Lean protein sources. And for the 3 ounces, how many calories and how many grams of protein are you getting in? These all meet the 7 to 100 ratio. Some additional lean protein sources. Carbohydrate sources, including fruits and starchy vegetables. Carbohydrate sources, including beans and dairy. And carbohydrate sources, including grains. The next strategy is to drink 0-calorie beverages. We want to avoid sugar-sweetened beverages. This includes juice, even 100% fruit juice, sports drinks, soda, sweet tea, and chocolate milk. Sugar-sweetened beverages are essentially empty calories that don't fill you up. They provide you with calories but aren't filling you up with nutrients. Alcohol is another example of an empty calorie, including beer, wine, and liquor, so we want to watch our consumption. Our goal is 64 ounces of water per day, and if you want to add variety to your water, I encourage using low-calorie flavor packets or liquids, or even adding in some fresh fruit or citrus. The average American eats out on average 5 times per week. That's a quarter of our meals eaten outside the home today. 1 out of 4 Americans eats fast food every day. Food away from the home tends to be of lower nutritional quality. It contains more total fat, saturated fat, sodium, cholesterol, and less fiber and calcium. For each meal away from the home, approximately 150 additional calories are consumed. We multiply 150 additional calories by that 5 times per week. That's 750 additional calories per week. That would translate to an 11-pound weight difference in a year. You might not notice an 11-pound weight difference in a year, but I can assure after 5, you'd notice that 55-pound weight increase. We recommend significantly reducing the frequency of eating out after surgery. It can be hard to make appropriate food choices while eating out, and it's a great way to save yourself calories. Not only are you going to save yourself calories, but you're also going to save money. The average American spends almost half of its food budget on eating out. Now, if you are going to eat out, there are some ways that we can reduce our intake. Plan ahead. Look online for the menu and nutritional information and choose your meal ahead. This can decrease your impulse order at the restaurant. Ask for nutrition information at the restaurant if you weren't able to look ahead. If you go to a chain restaurant, they actually have to provide you with the nutritional information if you ask. If it's not already on the menu, don't hesitate to ask someone for the nutrition information. Order first. We tend to order similar to our fellow diners. Going first means you're more likely to stick with your original healthy plan. Look for light menu items. Many restaurants now have certain sections for these items. Choose a balance of protein, vegetables, and healthy carbohydrates. If a restaurant doesn't serve vegetables or fruits, it generally isn't a place that you want to find yourself. Order smaller portions. Look for high-protein appetizers and add a side vegetable or salad to make it a complete meal. Ask how items are prepared, and don't be afraid to ask for specific recommendations. Go back. 3, 2, 1. Ask how items are prepared, and don't be afraid to make specific requests. No cheese or mayonnaise, salad dressing on the side, or no oils, butters, or sauce on the vegetables. Choose foods that are grilled, baked, broiled, steamed, or roasted, and avoid foods that are fried, breaded, creamy, crispy, or fritters. Substitute high-calorie side dishes for additional steamed vegetables or a salad. Split a meal with a friend or ask for a to-go container at the beginning of the meal so you can box up half before you even start. Don't drink your calories. If you want an alcoholic beverage, try a glass of wine instead of a heavy beer or a mixed drink. And of course, avoid all-you-can-eat restaurants or buffets. We generally want to get our bang for our buck when we're going to places like this, and after surgery, that's not going to happen. Mindful eating. Mindful eating means eating with complete awareness and being present in the moment. Mindless eating means eating with distractions. We want to turn those distractions off. Turn off the TV, don't play with your phone, and don't eat at your desk. Have a designated space where you are eating meals. You want to eat slowly and give yourself 30 minutes to eat a meal. It takes 20 minutes for your brain to register that your stomach's full. If you're eating faster than that, there's a reason why you get full after the fact and can feel uncomfortable. By slowing down your meal times, you allow those triggers to send the messages and allow you to learn when to stop. Put your fork and spoon down between each bite. Pay attention to the flavors and textures you are enjoying. This can actually bring more enjoyment and pleasure to your meals, and you can get satisfied quicker. Listen to your body. Stop when you are satisfied. The goal isn't to feel full. The signaling of full or stuffed means you've already overconsumed. When we talk about mindful eating, we use what's called the hunger satiety scale. It's a scale of 1 to 10. 1, you are so hungry you can eat anything you can. 10 very uncomfortable, maybe even painful. Our goal throughout the day is to stay between a 4 and a 7. 4, I'm a little hungry, you can wait to eat, but you know you will be getting hungrier soon. 7, I'm comfortably satisfied, hunger is definitely gone. Stop here, you may not feel hungry again for another 2 to 3 hours. It's important that we're also identifying whether or not it's physical hunger versus emotional or head hunger. Physical hunger is progressive. As you can see, as you go down in numbers, you're getting hungrier and hungrier. That urge gets greater. Emotional hunger is more immediate, and you generally fixate on one food. I encourage you, have a glass of water, go for a walk, call a friend. Identify whether or not it's true physical hunger. If you find yourself in the kitchen and you recognize it's not physical, it's emotional hunger, distract that energy and do something else. We cannot talk about weight management without discussing environmental control. It's important that you are setting up your environment for success. Do not rely on willpower and self-control. We know willpower and self-control can only take us so far, and generally, this is where diets fail. Environmental control uses 2 different strategies. There's subtractive control, where we're removing tempting foods from the environments that you spend the most time, home, work, car, etc. And additive control, where we're adding healthful foods front and center. A fruit basket on the counter or at your work desk, washed and prepared vegetables and fruits on the middle shelf in the fridge for ready-to-go snacks. We know if we put it in the crisper, that bottom shelf, I always say that's where vegetables and fruits go to die, because we forget about them there. Put them where they're at eye level. Think about your environment. How can you set it up for better success? Many of you might be thinking, I live with other people. But I want you to ask yourself, do they need to have these foods around when you're trying so hard to lose weight and gain control of your health? Or can they live without them? Chances are they can live without them. It's important to recognize that this isn't just about you getting healthy. It's the whole house making a change. If the house isn't making a change, it can be very challenging for you to stick to your goals. Last is practicing physical activity. Physical activity can help speed up your weight loss momentum. But most importantly, it's a key strategy for long-term weight management. Our goal is to get in a minimum of 150 minutes of exercise per week. That's 30 minutes 5 times a week. This is intentional exercise, so it's outside of your typical day in and day out routine. We also want to incorporate in resistance training 3, 2, 1. We also want to incorporate in resistance training 2 to 3 times per week. Most importantly, you need to have fun while being active. Most of our patients start out with something like walking. Maybe they'll start with 5 minutes at a time and slowly increase that to get to that ultimate 30 minutes. Or water exercises. You're more buoyant in the water, which can reduce pressure on your knees and joints, which can make it more easy to be physically active. The next video series is Part 8, Rapid Weight Loss Before Surgery and Goal Setting. Many of you might have a goal weight that needs to be met prior to surgery. This is what was recommended to you by the surgeon when you came in for your initial visit and will be on your individualized checklist. It's important to note that this pre-surgical weight loss goal must be met prior to starting your 2-week pre-operative diet before surgery. You will learn more about your pre-op diet when you come in for your surgery prep class. For those struggling to meet their pre-surgical weight loss goal, we actually start you on the first phase of the pre-op diet. The first phase of the pre-op diet consists of 3 protein shakes and 1 healthy meal per day. When looking at protein shakes, they do need to meet certain guidelines. They need to be less than 200 calories per serving. They need to contain 15 to 30 grams of protein per serving and less than 15 grams of sugar per serving. Your healthy meal is 3 to 4 ounces of a lean protein plus 2 cups of a non-starchy vegetable. No fried or breaded items or sauces or gravies on your vegetables or meats. If you don't want to weigh out, measure, and prepare, you can use a frozen, portion-controlled entree under 350 calories. We do recommend avoiding those starchy-based ones like the rice or pasta-based dishes. You need to be getting in at least 64 ounces of water per day, and I encourage you get these in outside of your shakes. If you are finding yourself hungry between meals, add in a vegetable or fruit snack to help avoid going off plan. Do note, if you have diabetes, you need to consult with your physician before starting this diet, as some of your medications may need to be adjusted. Also, make sure you're checking your blood glucose more frequently. You are at high risk for hypoglycemia, or low blood sugars. To conclude this 8-part video series, I would like for you to set some goals. When we're setting goals, we want to make them SMART goals. S stands for specific. What exactly do I want to achieve? M stands for measurable. How can I measure this? A, achievable. Is your goal attainable? R, realistic. Is your goal realistic in the time frame set? And T, timely. What is that time frame? So an example of a SMART goal is I'm going to track my daily food intake on MyFitnessPal for the next week. This goal is specific, you can measure it, it's achievable and realistic, and you have a set time frame that you are working on it. A SMART goal would not be, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. That might be your objective that you would like to aim for. But what I would like for you to do is set some behaviors that you can practice that will help you in achieving that weight loss. So on that handout, the post-test, there is actually 3 areas for you to set goals. I would like for you to set 3 SMART goals that will help you to lose weight, or if you don't have a weight loss goal that still needs to be met prior to surgery, I want you to set some goals that are going to help prepare you for surgery. The last thing we want to do is wait to make changes until after surgery. The more changes you can make before, the easier it's going to be after. So on that sheet, I want you to set 3 SMART goals. Here are some examples of SMART goals. Track your daily food intake on MyFitnessPal for the next month. Increase vegetables and fruits to 5 servings per day. Aim for a minimum of 64 ounces of no-calorie fluids daily. Incorporate exercise 30 minutes 3 times per week. Reduce eating out to no more than 1 time per week. Start the rapid weight loss diet Monday and follow for 2 weeks. And this concludes the 8-part video series. Thank you for watching. There's some important information that I do want you to note. Please make sure you are bringing in your completed post-test and goals to your next appointment at Erlanger Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery Center. Or you can scan them in and email them to metabolicsurgery@erlanger.org to receive credit for completion of the nutrition and weight loss class. These must be turned in prior to you being scheduled for the pre-op bariatric education class. If you would like a copy of these slides to reference, please visit our website. Hold on. There was a mistake in here. Okay. Three, two, one. And that concludes the 8-part video series. Thank you for watching. There is some important information that you need to note. Please bring in your completed post-test and goals to your next appointment at Erlanger Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery Center, or scan them in and email them to metabolicsurgery@erlanger.org to receive credit for completion of the nutrition and weight loss class. These must be turned in prior to you being scheduled for your bariatric surgery prep class. If you would like a copy of these slides to reference, please visit our website at www.erlanger.org/bariatrics and click on Bariatric Education.